Most children have imaginary friends. They show up around the same time a child starts playing alone. They talk, laugh, hold invisible tea parties, and eventually they fade away. But what happens when they don't? What happens when that imaginary friend starts appearing in places the child shouldn't be? When they know things no one ever told them? When the child says, "He told me where he's buried." That's what happened in a small Georgia town to a girl named Heidi. This is Creep Canvas, and I'm the Creep. And tonight, we travel to Ellerslie, Georgia, a quiet stretch of countryside just outside Columbus, where in the early 1990s, a young couple moved into a modest home with their daughter, only to discover that something had already taken up residence. A man, wearing a dark suit, standing by the fence, smiling. He didn't speak at first, but their daughter spoke for him. Heidi was just 3 years old when the hauntings began. Not with flickering lights, not with cold spots or flying dishes, but with a name. "Mr. Gordy," she said. "He comes to visit me in the backyard." She described him in detail. A nice, older man with white hair and a black suit. He smiled a lot. He was kind. Her parents smiled politely, the way you do when your child invents a friend. They didn't know Mr. Gordy had been dead for years. Her parents, Lisa and Andy Wyrick, weren't superstitious. Lisa worked in healthcare. Andy was a blue-collar worker. They weren't ghost hunters. They didn't watch horror movies. They just wanted to raise their daughter in peace. But Heidi's friends didn't go away. They multiplied. They moved. And they grew darker. What started as playtime in the yard became whispered voices in the hallway. What started as invisible friends became bruises on Heidi's body. And eventually, she said the words no parents want to hear. "He told me he wants me to come with him. He says I'm supposed to die now." In this episode, we'll tell the full story of the Wyrick family haunting, the mysterious man in the suit and the others who followed, the physical marks that appeared on Heidi and on her mother, the local records that matched the names of Heidi's imaginary friends, and the unseen force that tried to take Heidi from her family again and again. We'll explore the investigation, the church's response, the media's spotlight, and the final decision the family had to make to either stay or run. This is not a ghost story from the 1800s. It didn't happen in a castle or a forgotten asylum. It happened in 1993 to a little girl in a single-story house with a plastic swing set and a bedroom full of stuffed animals. It happened to a family who had no idea what they were walking into. And it happened long after the ghosts were supposed to be gone. In the summer of 1988, Lisa and Andy Wyrick were just starting out. Newly married, young, and hopeful. They had their first daughter, Heidi, and they were ready to put down roots. That's what brought them to Ellerslie, Georgia, a quiet, wooded area outside Columbus. A rural town with friendly neighbors, big sky, and long stretches of road lined with tall pines and honeysuckle. To Lisa, it felt like a fresh start. To Andy, it was a place to raise a family. And to Heidi, just a toddler at the time, it was home. For a little while, at least. The house was modest, a single-story ranch. 3 bedrooms, a backyard with a swing set, and a long fence that lined the back edge of the woods. The Wyricks didn't have much, but they had peace. Lisa painted the nursery. Andy cut the grass every Saturday. Heidi toddled through the kitchen in footy pajamas. It was everything they'd prayed for. Until the knocking started. At first, it was just little things. A picture frame that kept falling, even though the nail was solid. The hallway light that flickered even after changing the bulb. A cold breeze near Heidi's room even when the windows were shut. Lisa chalked it up to an old house. Andy rolled his eyes and blamed the wiring. But Heidi started waking up crying, pointing to the corner and saying things like, "He's watching me again." When Lisa asked who, Heidi just said, "Mr. Gordy." It was Lisa's sister Joyce who first heard the name clearly. She was babysitting one afternoon while Lisa was at work. She had asked Heidi if she wanted to come inside for lunch. Heidi looked at the fence and said, "I can't. I'm talking to Mr. Gordy." Joyce looked over and no one was there. She asked who Mr. Gordy was, and Heidi answered without hesitation. "He's my friend. He lives by the fence. He's really old, but he's really nice." Joyce told Lisa that night. Lisa smiled politely, but her gut twisted. She didn't know any neighbors named Gordy. And something about the way Heidi said it, so certain, so calm, it didn't sound like make-believe. Lisa started asking around, at church, at the general store, neighbors, old-timers. Eventually, an older woman at the gas station said, "Gordy? You mean James S. Gordy? He's been dead for 20 years. He'd lived in a small house near their lot. Died of natural causes in the 1970s. No family left. No grave marker close by. But Heidi had described him in detail. The black suit, the white hair, the cane with the gold handle. All accurate." Lisa didn't know what to think. Kids say strange things, but they don't describe dead men in detail. They don't know names from old land records, and they don't keep talking to them every day. Lisa started noticing something else. Whenever she passed the hallway near Heidi's room, she felt it. A pressure. Not cold, not hot, but dense, like walking through a wall of water. And sometimes she swore she saw something move, just a flicker at the edge of her vision. But it always came from the same place, the stretch of hallway outside Heidi's door. One night, as Lisa passed it on the way to the kitchen, she heard it. A man's voice. low, calm, and clear. "Don't worry, she's mine now." At first, Mr. Gordy seemed harmless. He stood by the fence. He waved at Heidi. He told her stories, she said. Lisa and Andy chalked it up to a vivid imagination, until the stories became too real. And Mr. Gordy wasn't the only one she was talking to anymore. Heidi described Mr. Gordy like a favorite uncle. He was always dressed in a suit. He smiled but never touched her. He talked softly about the weather, the grass, the trees. Lisa even asked Heidi to draw him. She did. A stick figure with a cane, white hair, and glasses. Then she added something strange. A second figure. When Lisa asked, "Who's that?" Heidi said, "That's the other man. Mr. Gordy said he doesn't like him." Not long after Heidi drew the second figure, she started having nightmares. She'd wake up screaming, not crying, screaming. She'd say things like, "He came inside. He watches me sleep. He doesn't want me to tell you his name." Lisa asked who he was, and Heidi hesitated, and then whispered, "The man in the suit." Lisa thought she meant Mr. Gordy, but Heidi shook her head. "No, not Mr. Gordy. The other man. The one with blood on his shirt." That was when the tone changed. Mr. Gordy was no longer just a curiosity. He became a protector. Because something else had moved in, and it didn't want to play. Lisa began hearing footsteps. Not the soft pitter-patter of a child. Heavy, measured, slow. Up and down the hallway, always stopping outside Heidi's room. Sometimes the doorknob would jiggle. Once Lisa found the door open, even though she knew she'd shut it. Heidi started closing her closet doors every night. She said she didn't like being looked at. One night Lisa asked, "Who?" Heidi pointed to the closet and whispered, "The man with no mouth." Then came Khan, the third presence Heidi mentioned. She told her parents, "He's little, he's a boy, but he's scared of the man in the suit." Lisa asked where he came from, and Heidi said, "From the woods. He's looking for his mom." The name meant nothing at first, but years later, it would match a real child who had died on the property in the early 1900s. Another name Heidi should have never known. Heidi was only 4 years old. She couldn't read. She had no access to public records, no way to invent what she described. Yet somehow, she knew. Not just names, but details. Like how Mr. Gordy walked with a limp, how the boy Khan had a scar on his neck, how the dark man whispered things only grown men should say. Lisa tried to bring it up at church. People smiled and nodded, suggested maybe Heidi was going through a phase. Andy refused to believe it was anything more than imagination. But Lisa knew her daughter. And what Heidi was saying wasn't just pretend. She wasn't trying to scare anyone. She was reporting, like a witness, like someone who didn't understand the weight of what they were saying. And then one day, she said something that made Lisa stop breathing. Mr. Gordy said the man in the suit is angry. He said he wants to take me to the woods. And he said, if you don't let him, he'll make you go away instead. This wasn't pretend. This wasn't fun. And whatever it was just getting started. Heidi Wyrick had always talked about Mr. Gordy like he was a friend. Kind, soft-spoken, protective. But the man in the black suit was different. He didn't speak in full sentences. He didn't wave or smile. He watched. From doorways, from windows, from the shadows behind Heidi's bed. And then one night, he stepped into the house. It was just past midnight when Lisa heard it. Footsteps. Not scurrying. Not animal sounds. Boot steps. Deliberate. Slow. Coming from the hallway outside her bedroom. Andy was asleep beside her, and Heidi was in her room. Lisa sat up, held her breath, and then the hallway light turned off. She stepped into the hallway, heart pounding, and standing at the far end was a tall figure. Black suit, black shoes, and a face that wasn't a face at all. Just darkness where features should have been. No eyes, no mouth. But somehow he was looking at her. She froze. The air around her turned thick. Her ears rang. She couldn't breathe. Then he was gone. Lisa told herself she'd been dreaming, sleepwalking, hallucinating, until it happened again, and again, and again. Each time the man got closer. Once she found her bedroom door wide open when she was sure she'd locked it. Another night, she woke up with scratches down her leg, deep enough to bleed, but not enough to leave a trail. She showed Andy and he shrugged. Maybe it was the dog. They didn't own a dog. Heidi was still seeing Mr. Gordy, but now she was seeing the other man more often, and he wasn't staying by the fence anymore. He was in the house. Heidi stopped sleeping through the night. She'd scream, shrill, panicked screams that didn't sound like a child's nightmares. Lisa would rush in and find her under the bed. Once, she said, he stood in the corner all night, and he was smiling without a mouth. Lisa asked, "Did Mr. Gordy say anything?" Heidi nodded. He said not to listen to the man in the suit, because he lies, and he's really not a man. Desperate, Lisa called the church. A local pastor came to the house. He walked the property, prayed in every room, said the home felt off. But he didn't offer an exorcism, just holy water and scripture. Heidi's bedroom stayed quiet for one night. Then the closet door slammed at 2 a.m. and Heidi woke up with bruises on her back. Lisa didn't let her sleep alone after that. The next night, Lisa woke up gasping. She felt like someone had been holding her down, like fingers around her wrist, a knee pressing on her chest. She looked at her arm and saw it, 4 deep bruises in the shape of fingers. No explanation and no memory, just pain and pressure. And a voice she swore she heard whisper, "You can't stop me." It wasn't just the house anymore. Lisa saw the man in the suit at the edge of the yard while Heidi played. Andy started hearing footsteps in the garage even when it was locked. A neighbor once said, "I thought I saw someone standing at your daughter's window. I almost called the police." There was no one there. But the next morning, a child-sized handprint was found on the inside of the glass, on the 2nd floor, and Heidi hadn't been in that room. They weren't dealing with a ghost anymore. They were dealing with something else. Something that didn't want attention. Something that wanted obedience. Or maybe worse, worship. By 1994, the Wyrick family was out of explanations. Heidi still saw Mr. Gordy, but now she only mentioned him when she was scared. Because the man in the black suit, the one she had once called the angry man, was no longer content to stay in the shadows. He wanted inside their rooms, inside their dreams, inside their lives. And once he got in, he didn't leave quietly. It began with bruises, first on Lisa, then on Heidi. Dark, fingertip-shaped marks that appeared overnight, then deeper ones. One morning, Lisa helped Heidi out of bed and gasped. There were 3 long scratches down her daughter's spine. Red, raw, almost surgical. Heidi didn't cry. She just whispered, "He told me I can't tell anymore, or he'll hurt you next." Lisa broke down. Andy still thought it was just stress, coincidence. But that night, he woke up with a nosebleed and found a bruise on his neck, shaped like a handprint. One afternoon, Lisa turned on the TV. Static. No signal. She walked away. Heidi stayed in the room. When Lisa returned, she found her daughter staring into the screen, not blinking. Lisa said her name. No answer. She touched Heidi's shoulder and Heidi said, "He says he's in the wires now. He says if we leave, he'll come with us." The static pulsed, loud enough to distort the air. Lisa pulled the plug from the wall, and still, the TV stayed on for another 3 seconds. Andy began to hear whispers. Not from Heidi, not from Lisa, from inside the house. Late at night, coming from the vents in the ceiling, from the floorboards, from the walls. He'd press his ear to the drywall and swear he heard, "She's mine. Don't fight it. Bring her out." Sometimes it was one voice. Sometimes it was two, arguing, overlapping, colliding. And one night, he heard his own voice whisper back. Heidi stopped sleeping in her bed. She'd curl up in the hallway. Said she couldn't go back into the room. When asked why, she said, because he walks through the walls now. Lisa thought she meant a dream until she saw it. Late one night, walking from the bathroom to the kitchen, Lisa looked up and froze. He was there, standing at the end of the hallway. But he wasn't just a shadow this time. His shoes scraped the floor. He leaned forward and smiled. She could see teeth this time, jagged, mismatched, as if they didn't belong in a human mouth. The final straw came when Heidi spoke a sentence that chilled Lisa to the bone. She was coloring in the kitchen, silent, focused. Lisa asked what she was drawing. Heidi looked up and said, "He says if I don't come with him, he'll drag you out of bed by your throat." Lisa stared at her daughter. "Who said that?" Heidi shrugged and whispered, "He has no name." And then she began humming, like it was a lullaby. Lisa reached out again, this time to a local paranormal team. They brought recording devices, thermal cameras, and EMF readers. They left after just one visit. The lead investigator said, "There's something here. I don't know what it is, but it doesn't want us to fix it." Heidi began speaking in her sleep, full sentences, in a deep male voice. She'd wake up with blood on her sheets and have no memory. This wasn't a haunting anymore. This was an attachment, one that had no intention of letting go. Not of the house, not of Heidi, not of any of them. By now, Lisa Wyrick wasn't questioning if something was in the house. She just wanted to know what it was, and more urgently, who. Because Heidi's imaginary friends weren't fading away. They were becoming more specific, more detailed, and more terrifyingly verifiable. Lisa drove to the Harris County Courthouse on a rainy Wednesday. She wasn't sure what she was looking for. She asked about property records, deeds, obituaries, and that's when she found it. A land deed dated 1950, listing a man named James S. Gordy as the original property owner. That was Mr. Gordy. Heidi had never met him, never seen a photo, but everything she described, from the cane to the glasses to the limp in his walk, was exact. James S. Gordy had died in 1974, nearly 20 years before Heidi was even born. Lisa tracked down a distant relative of the Gordy family. She brought a photo from an old yearbook. Heidi took one look at it and said, "That's him. That's Mr. Gordy." She wasn't guessing, she knew. And when asked what he wanted, she simply said, "He just watches. He wants me to be okay. He said the bad man can't get me if he's there." Heidi wasn't scared of Mr. Gordy. She was scared of the others. Then there was the little boy Heidi called Con. Lisa thought it was just another imaginary name until she found a newspaper clipping from 1921. A child named Lon Con Batchelor had died tragically. He was 5 years old, lived less than a mile from the Wyrick property. He was buried with no headstone. Cause of death? Unspecified trauma. Some said he fell. Others say he was pushed. Lisa asked Heidi what had happened to Con. Heidi answered, "He fell down a hole in the woods. The man in the suit told him to." The scariest figure, the man in the black suit, remained a mystery. Heidi refused to say his name. She said he whispered to her. Sometimes he told her secrets. Other times, threats. She said he had once been a man, but not anymore. She claimed he followed people, not places. He came to the woods looking for something, and when he didn't find it, he started looking in people instead. Lisa asked a local historian if there had ever been any crimes near the land. The woman hesitated, then brought out an article from the early 1900s. The article told the story of a drifter, a man who wore black, spoke little, and did odd jobs. He'd been accused of harming a young girl, beaten by locals, and driven into the woods. His body was never recovered. Some said he died, others said he escaped. But years later, hikers reported seeing a man standing alone in the pines, staring at nothing, unmoving for hours. No prints, no trace, just a dark figure, always watching. Heidi shouldn't have known any of this. Not the names, not the history, not the secrets buried in court records and yellowed newsprint. But she knew it all, and she carried it like a weight. One night she told Lisa, "He showed me how he died. He said he doesn't feel pain anymore." Lisa asked, "Who?" Heidi stared at the wall and said, "All of them." The past wasn't just present, it was active, living through her daughter. And no matter how many answers they found, one question kept returning. What did it want? The Wyricks never got the closure they wanted. There was no final exorcism, no smoking gun, no dramatic confrontation where the entity vanished and peace returned. What they got instead was survival. And in a story like this, sometimes that's all you can ask for. Despite everything, the voices, the bruises, the scratches, the whispers in the vents, the Wyricks never left the house. They moved Heidi to a different bedroom, had the property blessed again, talked to her, prayed over her. Lisa said she asked God every night, "Why here? Why us?" But the answer never came. Lisa leaned on her faith. She placed crosses in every room, lit candles at night, played worship music softly through the house, and slowly, some of the activity faded. Heidi still saw Mr. Gordy, but only at a distance. She stopped mentioning the man in the suit, but Lisa never let her sleep alone again. And some nights, even years later, she'd wake up with the feeling that someone was standing over her. When you live through something like this, you don't recover. You adjust. You build your routines around what you fear. You learn where not to walk after dark. You ignore the corner of the room where the shadows are too deep. And you call it home anyway. Heidi went on to live a relatively normal life, at least on the outside. But the memories stayed. She would later say she still occasionally felt watched, that she still saw people no one else could see, and that some things followed her into adulthood. Not voices, not scratches, but a sense that something had been allowed in, and that once it knows your name, it never really lets go. The Wyrick case was eventually documented by paranormal researchers. Their story became a book, then a TV episode, then a 2013 dramatized film called A Haunting in Georgia. But Lisa never sought attention. She said, "We didn't ask for this. We didn't want to believe. But when your daughter is crying at night and something invisible is holding her down, you believe real fast." Skeptics call it suggestion, stress, a child's fantasy mixed with adult paranoia. Maybe it was, but there were records, real names, verified deaths. And if the man in the black suit was just a dream, why did he leave bruises? Why did he leave scratches on Lisa's legs? Why did strangers see someone in the window when no one was home? And why did a 4-year-old girl know details about 3 dead people she'd never met? The truth is, we don't know. And maybe that's the scariest part of all. That you can raise your children with love, fill your home with light, and still, something might come. Something that doesn't care how good you are, how strong your faith is, how loud you pray. Because some spirits don't knock on the door. They're already inside. You've been listening to Creep Canvas, and I'm the Creep. If this episode unsettled you, share it, review it, and tell someone who's ever had a visitor in the dark. And if you've ever seen something you couldn't explain, or had a child tell you something that chilled your blood, we want to hear your story. Until next time, keep your lights on, keep your eyes open, and remember, not all imaginary friends are imaginary.